another episode of At the Table. We're joined here by my co-chair, Lucy Caluti. As I think most of you know by now, we are co-chairs of an organization called the American Italian Food Coalition. It is a coalition of 450 trade associations, food producers, and manufacturers that come from Italy that want to make sure that the American population has access to affordable and nutritious food. So that's our mission. We're passionate about it, and we are being joined today by someone who predates our passion, succeeds our passion, and is just an expert on nutrition. I want to thank and welcome Dr. Roger Clemens, who is a faculty member at USC and has a bio that goes on and on. So Lucy, you are going to do the introduction. So take a deep breath, because it is an introduction like no other, because he's accomplished so much and continues to make the world a better and healthier place. So from me, Doctor, thank you so much for being here. And Lucy, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Susan. Welcome, Roger, if I may.
Thank you for the opportunity to be with you today. It's a very exciting time.
Oh, well, Dr. Roger Clemens is a faculty member at the USC Alfred E. Mann School of Pharmacy in the Department of Regulatory and Quality Sciences. Additionally, he is an elected fellow in the American Society for Nutrition, American College of Nutrition, Institute of Food Technologists, and the International Academy of Food Science and Technology. Dr. Clemens, as you can hear, is a most prominent voice in nutrition. He's published over 80 original manuscripts, on nutrition and food science, and appeared at over 300 domestic and international lectures, including one of ours at the American Italian Food Coalition. Dr. Clemens published a food, medicine, and health column in food technology for 14 years, and it had global distribution. Dr. Clemens, welcome to At the Table.
It's a delight to be at the table with all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My first question to you is going to be about, you were with us, with Susan and me, and the American Italian Food Coalition at the US Capitol very recently, where you gave the most interesting and fascinating presentation on the science of nutrition and then the humanity of nutrition. And I was just left with just a need here to ask you, can you share with us, you know so much about nutrition, and you've decided to devote a considerable amount of time and energy on those who are underserved. Tell us about that.
It's my passion. I've served on every continent of the world, and most of the countries of the world are working with underserved population groups, particularly in children. In particular, I look at my work in Argentina and Los Heras, and working with really great people who have volunteered their lives basically to serve the underserved populations and the poorest of the poor in Argentina, people who have really nothing, but they make the very best out of it because of the volunteers, and work with a medical school there in Los Heras, just outside of Mendoza. I've worked in Ethiopia, for example, and where, again, parts of Ethiopia had nothing, the highest incidence of slavery, highest incidence of HIV, the highest incidence of poverty in parts of Africa, and yet I wanted to work with the people there to make a real difference. Those are just two examples of what I've tried to do here on all continents, including a project I'm trying to do here in the United States. So it's been a delightful time to work with pioneers in the area, and I'm hoping that I can leave a legacy that will make a difference in the lives of people.
Well, that's just amazing, if I may jump in here, Lucy, because when you talk about a legacy and you talk about the work that you're doing, let me drill down just a little bit on that. I know that you are passionate about it. I know you've traveled all over the world. You recently, correct me if I'm wrong, were in Serbia, where you did some work with women and children. What is, in all these instances, what is the greatest hurdle? Is it access to affordable nutrition? Is it knowledge about affordable nutrition? Is it all of that?
Well, the cultural diversities, the traditions you need to understand, and the political environments. Not every country is as free as we have in the United States. And even when I try to work here in the United States, we get a lot of political pushback. I've worked with war-torn environments, and Serbia is one of them. The tremendous political history in that country, as you're probably well aware of, and work in Croatia. We're supposed to go to Croatia this year, but right on just juxtaposed, of course, and trying to get a clinical work in that, particularly in women's health.
Mhm.
That project, working with physicians in Serbia, great people, wonderful physicians, passionate about the people. In this case, we're looking at women's health and a number of issues, but trying to get things going in the right direction is very, very difficult.
And now you also said you're working, because I want people to understand that your passion is also here in the United States. You're doing some significant work with the underserved, but particularly with Native Americans and the indigenous tribes throughout the United States. Can you talk just a little bit about that?
I do have a passion there, much for political reasons and maybe some social issues. I have a real passion for the Native Americans who are in the state of Maine, for example. There are 4 tribes, if you will, reservations for the state of Maine. They have health care, but not to the degree they need. So we look at from state of Maine to Saba, the island of Saba there in the
Mhm.
Caribbean. There are really tremendous needs, healthcare needs. And trying to work with them, well, you can't work with them because a lot of reasons. Don't upset the apple cart, so to speak. And then the support in the state of Maine, which doesn't support Native Americans, and also the federal government, which doesn't support Native Americans. They're underutilized buildings in that state, but we can't get appropriations through so we can actually make a difference. We want to set up the medical school for Native Americans.
Mm.
We could train the next generation of Native Americans to better serve that population group, and
It's amazing.
at a very difficult time.
Oh, and that's too bad. Lucy, let me just jump in with one more question, then over to you. So, what we talk a lot about here at AFIC is nutrition. And in our prior discussions, and when you when you spoke on Capitol Hill to a bunch of legislators and staffers who were going into the Farm Bill, you talked about the fact that positive nutrition and nutrition in and of itself can help solve a lot of these problems, or at least get us on the way to a very successful lifestyle for so many of these underserved populations. Can you just comment briefly on that?
Well, disease with the non-communicable diseases are very difficult to manage and difficult to understand. They're quite complex. Perhaps the most prevalent ones, for example, are obesity and cardiovascular disease, hypertension.
Mhm.
Are probably top of the list for many people, and obviously even non-communicable disease includes cancer, which is this big. It's not just a single disease; it's multiple diseases. So trying to understand the complexity, and it's not a single factor; it's multiple factors. Well, a tremendous amount of efforts go to a single factor like cellular energetics or food intake, but it's much more complex than that. And that complexity is not really understood. And I think what we're trying to do with your organization is to broaden one's perspective at the same time, really realize what we have for the future. As I mentioned, and there in Washington, D.C., we've gone through a century of looking at the basics of nutrition and discovery. Now we're in the 21st century. Well, what do we do next? As a matter of fact, the whole idea of precision nutrition is not new. I've worked with many people in the space, and interesting enough, there are a number of companies in the world on the world stage that actually adopted this whole concept of precision nutrition, have new divisions on precision nutrition. So that means we have to understand the culture, the traditions, as well as the genetics of individuals that will make a difference for us to understand, make a difference in people's lives.
Thank you. Lucy?
Yeah, I want to follow up also on our underserved Native American population. I've spent a good part of my adult life living in North Dakota, and now I'm on the board of an organization started by Senator Byron Dorgan, a nonprofit to work with Native American children across the country. But we got the idea primarily from working with the Chippewa and the Sioux and the Arikara and the Hidatsa in North Dakota, who the children have such incredible health issues. And the lifespan in North Dakota on the reservation is age 46.
Oh,
And it's painful to watch, and it's painful to observe, frankly, all over this country, but I certainly see it on the Indian reservations, childhood obesity and untreated ear infections. I mean, I could go on and on. Is it a matter of Congress doing more to get, or is it the bureaucracy? I mean, we have an Indian health service. What's your observation about that? Because my heart breaks when I look at these wonderful children who have so much potential, and they're getting sick over things that the rest of us, solve.
yeah.
The management process we have for Native Americans is upside down and backwards. We should treat them as people, and we don't do that, in my opinion. I've worked in that space. I've worked in North Dakota and South Dakota, and trying to understand not only the social dynamics as well as the traditions of the Native Americans, but understand their health issues. And to your excellent point, the issues that we see there, Native Americans, are inappropriate. Certainly, our experience when I work with North and South Carolina, I've been there many times. I worked up in Fargo and lectured at the university. The same with South Carolina, South Dakota, excuse me. And I feel your passion, and I feel your hurt, and I share that. And so I think it would take, the United States is a country of volunteers. We have Physicians Without Borders, we have Dentists Without Borders, but we do not have an organization called Nutrition Without Borders. We need to have an organization that stops in and working with Native Americans. A part of working with Native Americans is to understand the culture and traditions.
Right.
So we need to respect people, and once you respect the people, we need to gain their trust. When I was in the military, how you gain the trust is by working with the people and respecting the people. And once you do that, you can make great inroads. In this case, we want to make great inroads in their health and through better nutrition.
Well, thank you for saying that. I could not agree more. Now, if I can just transition to something a little more positive, and that is the Mediterranean diet, which Susan and I advocate for as part of the mission of the American Italian Food Coalition. And we know that you're a strong advocate. Tell us why, and how do we spread the word about the importance of the Mediterranean diet? Because after all, it's about our environment, our own healthcare, so many things. Tell us.
Well, I know Emilio Ross there in Spain, and Emilio did the pioneering work on the Mediterranean style diet. Mediterranean style diet varies around the world because we have a dynamic culture. It's a dynamic world. And most of the Mediterranean style diet is also related to accessibility of food and food quality of food. And many of the areas of the world that really have the greatest incidence of non-communicable diseases actually do not have access to the food that we're talking about. So we need to be sure that the population at the highest risk of all risks, of course, should have access to the food. And it's a Mediterranean style like diet. And as you travel through Italy, I'm sure you have as well as I have.
Yeah.
And throughout, I thoroughly enjoyed my time in Italy. And I actually took one of my daughters there to go to chef school. She's a chef, as is her husband. But as you go through Italy from the north to the south, every style diet is there. So the Mediterranean style diet is, you see throughout Italy. Well, that would be throughout the world. And it varies from the culture and traditions and acceptability. And if you look at different cultures of the world, like I spent time in the Soviet Union, the palatability of some of the foods are not there. So how do we try to introduce foods that are acceptable in different cultures? And that really is a big challenge, as well as accessibility. To your opening remarks, we want to have food that is safe, nutritious, and affordable and available to the world's population. And we're not there yet.
Susan, I'm just going to follow up for a second. I remember at your lecture at the U.S. Capitol, you talked about how nutritious food can be made available to families, even if they're not following always fresh tomatoes and the olive oil and, the fish, the fresh fish. And that you were saying that you could make it healthy for like a working mom to have frozen peas and frozen string beans, and other kinds of ways to make sure that their children are getting something other than, a high starch, only starch, and fast food diet.
Well, you've touched the base on one of my passions. The work I did in Morocco, for example, working with women who are really the women of the world, are the gatekeepers of nutrition and health for their families. I'm passionate about that. I understand that. So I worked with women in Morocco, for example, who traveled by foot great distances to receive adequate medical care. And in turn, we gave them food that was stable, food that was processed in a box. Perhaps for many people, that's not acceptable. Let me tell you, when you work with populations, they don't have sanitation, don't have running water, they don't have electricity. Food in a box that's nutritious and healthful and backed saves lives. And I've done that in Argentina and throughout Argentina and much of South America. So if you look at technology in terms of food, and we look at, for example, one major company of the world changed the process in agriculture. And so in agriculture, harvesting certain types of foods, mechanical harvesting, they can harvest, flash freeze, blanch, flash freeze, and package that within 1 hour and maintain the nutritional quality of that food. And the nutritional quality of that food is really good for all of us. And think about not only people who are on terra firma, think about the people in long-range space travel. I worked with NASA many years ago, trying to do the very basics so that the people who are traveling from here to wherever will have better food for their future as well as their legacies. So the technology is really critical. And in part of that, interestingly enough, the typical person will embrace all kinds of technologies in their life, but they will not embrace the technology pertinent to food. Food saves lives, and that's exactly what we need to do through food.
Sorry about the dog barking in the background. That was my dog just saying she agrees 100% and she should get more food. It's really all she barks about.
Right.
If I can take as if my dog introduced us to taking an easier and brighter term discussion, hard turn, as they say in TV. Lucy and I also do a show on this channel called Mangia Bene, which is where we talk about our favorite foods and favorite recipes. Lucy does amazing cooking on the show, and we give out recipes and all. So before we say goodbye, because even though I know you do have that one fault, only one, I think, from talking to you, and that is that you are not Italian. But I think we can agree we'll make you an honorary Italian for all your amazing work that you have done. I would
welcome that opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, I dub you an honorary Italian. So here's the question: if you had to pick one Italian food, what is your favorite Italian food? Your favorite meal to sit down to?
My favorite food that when I was in Italy is risotto. I make risotto here in the United States, and it's a long process, as you know. But the various risottos throughout Italy were just fantastic. They were all different, which makes them unique. Every chef had his or her signature on that risotto, but I thoroughly enjoyed the risotto throughout Italy.
Okay, despite the sauce or however prepared, it's the risotto
cheese,
that matters.
How they make the rice and how they cook it. And what they add to it, the tomatoes and the olive oil or the olives and whatever you want to add to it. And it really, the textures, the color, the appeal, I really enjoy a good risotto. I found that even the restaurants that are in the back alleys, if you will, that are not perhaps the most popular place. I did this in China as well. And they're wonderful people, a terrific food. I said, that's it. So my daughter would tell you, wherever we went, Dad will order risotto. As well, gelato. I make gelato too.
You make gelato?
Well, there you go. Now there's something we can relate to 100%.
Well, I have a citrus tree, so I can make gelato. Every time people come over to the house, hey, hey, Raj, hey, Dad, can you make some gelato on XYZ? So we go out and harvest the oranges and lemons and everything else we have in citrus, and we make fresh gelato as part of the activity of the day.
Lucy, I think we're going to have to make our first field trip.
I have a spa and pool all ready for you. I even have spare rooms.
We're there. We're there. Hey, Doctor, thank you so much. First of all, let me thank you for who you are and the work that you have done. What a little godsend you are to people all over the world who have been largely ignored. We really are so grateful to know that you are in this world, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. What a legacy you have left, which is, you know, every place you touch, you leave healthier individuals, and I can think of no greater legacy than that. So I want to thank you for being with us today. I want to thank you for coming to DC a few weeks ago to talk to the members of Congress and their staff about positive nutrition and things that can be included in the Farm Bill. And I just want to thank you for allowing me to get to know you even for a very small time, because you are an absolutely incredible human being. And some days when I feel not so hopeful about the direction of this world or this country, it'll make me feel better when I know that there's a Dr. Roger Clemens in the world. Lucy?
Well said.
Thank you much. It's a real pleasure to work with all of you. Let's say we continue this dialogue and make a difference in a lot of people's lives for our future.
Well, yeah. We and the American Italian Food Coalition are right there with you. Before we go, everyone, we want to remind you to stay connected to the AIFC and Susan and me by following us on Twitter and Instagram. We're at AIF Coalition. And you can always find us on LinkedIn too. So thank you for joining us. Thanks to our wonderful guest. And we'll see you next time at the Table with Susan and Lucy. Bye-bye.